Hi everyone, welcome back to Karen Vibes. I don't know, my phone, the lighting keeps going bright then dull, then bright then dull, and then I'm not one of them tech savvies who know to fix this. I don't understand why it keeps going this way. But anyway, I'm sure you guys can still see me make me out. So welcome guys to Karen Vibes. Hope you're all doing well and you're having a lovely Sunday afternoon. Alright, so we're just going to get right into it, right into our reading. So the last time I was on, we read chapter 17. We read chapter 17 and now we're going to read chapter 18. But before I do that, let me introduce my book. So the name of my book is Minty Ali, written by C.L.R. James and narrated by me, Karen Weir. Alright, so let's get right into it. So as usual, grab your snack or your tea or your cool drink and just relax and enjoy listening to me read. Alright, so it's chapter 18. So if you guys, as I normally say, you've been following me on my page, you'll have seen where I left off. So you can always go on and catch up for those who are new, and those who are not new, you know the drill. Alright, so we get right into it without further ado. Alright, so chapter 18. One Sunday morning, Mrs. Rose sent to tell Haynes by Maisie that she would be glad if he could spare a few minutes after breakfast. Certainly, he told Maisie, and then more quietly, "What's up?" She shrugged her shoulders. "Don't know. One thing I know, she's going to talk about Ben. That man always in the house. When he was living here, you couldn't turn around in the bedroom without seeing him. And now that he gone, an hour of the day don't pass, you're bound to hear his name." Mosquitoes out here. After lunch, with the sun as hot as fire, Haynes waited for Mrs. Rose, who did not come at once. When she did, she was full of apologies for having kept him. In her hand, she held an oblong Japanese box. Haynes gave her a seat. She drew the chair nearer, and unlocking the box, took out a bundle of papers, old receipts, a few letters, and some little account books, which she placed on the table. She wanted some help in her calculations, and Haynes consenting willingly. She put her position before him. Number 2 Minty Alley was mortgaged for $600 at 12%. She was supposed to pay $43 a quarter, $18 interest, and $25 on the principal, but the interest did not lessen as the capital was paid off. But why, Mrs. Rose? Mr. Rogers said it wouldn't pay him, Mr. Haynes, and he wanted the money, so we took it like that. No more than $100 had been paid on the capital. After the first year, they had paid nothing but interest. She wanted to know if she reduced the quarterly amount to $12.50, how long it would take to clear the house. About 8 years, Haynes told her, if she did not miss. 8 years? She said blankly. 8 years of this cake-making business with herself and Phyllis. Can't you make him lower the interest? No, Mr. Haynes. It is on a bill of sale on the house, and I can't tell him anything. We haven't paid the principal so long that he have us in his hand. He could take it over at any minute. I tell you, he safeguarded himself good when he made that mortgage. I am surrounded on all sides. All this persecution you see I suffering from Ben and that woman. It's a house they after, you know. I don't quite understand you, Mrs. Rose. The house is what they want to get. This house number 2, Minty Alley. But I thought it was your house. Yes, but let me explain. She took off her glasses. I thought you knew. The house is on his name and mine. I see, said Haynes. And he and me signed the deed of mortgage to Mr. Rogers. Now Mr. Rogers angry with him how he behave. But Mr. Rogers tell me to be very careful how I do anything because the house is not mine. It's only half mine. Mr. Ben fighting to see if I could fail and have to sell out. If Mr. Rogers have to sell me out, we can't do anything unless Ben's name come in. And then he will have to get his share and will spend it on the woman. Thought that was mosquitoes. Oh, they're gonna eat me alive. That is why you see him move in heaven and earth to see me fail in business. Gooms is my chief customer. I can make a little money out of Gooms' business now that the man is not licking out every spare cent. But once we borrowed 150 from Gooms, Ben and I sign. Whenever I borrow, Mr. Haynes, I always arrange to pay back principal and interest together. Every quarter, I give in Ben the money to pay. I think the man paying Mr. Haynes, he spent nearly every cent, and now that he leave me, the man go to Gooms and tell him if he want his money, he better come down on me quick. Oh my God. Gooms send for me and tell me, now nearly every cent I make is going to Gooms for debt. For debt I pay already. You don't think that is hard, Mr. Haynes? Haynes said nothing. Tell me, Mr. Haynes, she insisted. Yes, he said. And they haven't stopped there. The woman believes she is a doctor and know everything. I tell her that I have an uncle in the lunatic asylum. And when I had my first child 17 years ago, I lose my nerves and I talk a little wild. You know how long it is at a time like that? Well, I tell her so, and she and he. She put it up to him that if they work their business well, I will go mad. She say I have it in the family, and if I go mad and go up in the asylum, he will be in full control of the house and everything as they wish. Oh my goodness, that's a laughing matter for Miss Rose. Poor Mrs. Rose. But I am protected. They can't harm me. He, the man himself, come and tell me how much they pay him to send me off my head or even kill me sudden. And Mr. Ben himself is a man that knows things. But when he was with me, he tell me one or two things that make it impossible for anybody to harm me, least of all him. The man tell me that when he do his business, he see at once that I was too powerful for him. He come and tell me and ask me if I want to send it back where it come from. I tell him, no, I am not going to do Mr. Ben evil. I leave him and his wife in the hand of God. That is what the devil in the shape of man is doing to me, Mr. Haynes. Me, the woman who have done so much for him. She sat at the table with her arms resting on it, her hands holding some of the papers. Her eyes fixed on Haynes while she spoke. She suddenly withdrew and looked for some seconds out of the window, so that it seemed as if she was quite forgotten he was there. Then she heaved a deep sigh and saying, "Ha! God!" She spoke again. That nurse, Mr. Haynes. If you know what she was, the life she used to carry on in that that room next door where Miss Atwell is. I take her and make her something, and look what I get for it, Mr. Haynes. It is hard, hard, hard. I sacrifice myself for both of them, and I lose both of them at one time, my husband and my best friend. But you know, Mrs. Rose, I have often wondered why, as soon as you found out what was going on, you didn't turn her out. She didn't answer at once. Well, Mr. Haynes, I saw them kissing one day. They swore that was all, and I believed her. You see, I had got to like her. She was a woman who had nice ways. You have to give the devil his due. She was a nice person to have in the house. She could do nice little things, you know, and keep the house happy. And when I saw them that day, she begged so much pardon and promised so hard not to do it again that I forgive them. Haynes shook his head in disapproval. Yes, yes, Mr. Haynes, she admitted regretfully. Plenty people blame me, but look at it this way, Mr. Haynes. From the time we take the nurse in, we all live like family, and I had liked her little son a lot. When the nurse went out, I was in charge of him. Mr. Ben and Maisie and his mother too, all used to ill-treat him, so he clung to me. Well, about May last year, I saw them in the dining room. Mr. Haynes, I didn't know what to say. And then you see, I had endorsed a note for her for $120, and she was paying back, but she didn't pay back as much as half yet. So I had to study my head, or else I would have had to pay the money. Well, at least some people would say she's smart there, so she never want to run out the nurse, because she owe her money and she was paying her the money. So she just used her head and say, you know what, let me just close my eyes and wait till she pay off the money first. Anyhow, so I had to study my head, or else I would have had to pay the money. I make up my mind to wait a little bit and do as if nothing happened, as if I know nothing. But I couldn't help showing it, Mr. Haynes. She see it too. Anyway, she tell me one morning, Mrs. Rose, it seemed as if you in distress and Mrs. Rose, it seemed as if you in distress and I am the cause. I asked her, you do me anything? If you do me nothing, your conscience is clear. And nothing more happened that day. But the Sunday night, the three of us was eating at the table. I wasn't saying anything. I couldn't talk, Mr. Haynes. My heart was too full. He too was frightened because he had a guilty conscience. Well, all of a sudden she burst out crying. The nurse. Yes, Mr. Haynes, the nurse. You wouldn't think she is a woman like that, eh? But she's a funny woman. You never know where you are with her. He asked her what she was crying for, and the whole thing came out, Mr. Haynes. She cried, and she cried, and she begged me pardon. She said, after all I do for her is so she recompense me. She went to the nuns, she went to Mother Superior to ask Mother to beg my pardon. Mother sent to call me and beg me to forgive her. Mr. Haynes, she spent all Monday afternoon and Monday night in her room crying. She was doubled up under the bed. Yes, that same nurse, you see, always as if nothing troubled her. People tell me was a fool for me to not to put her out. But I don't think it was that, Mr. Haynes. Still, you can never tell. And look what happened now. Look what happened. Anyway, she cries so much I feel sorry for her, and I make her get up from where she was on the floor. She fall on me begging pardon, and I comfort her, and I tell her I forgive her. I tell her I see that her repentance was sincere, and I wouldn't bear anything in mind against her. This is my words to her. Nurse, I've been living long in the world, and I know. Men ask the questions and women have to say no. But sometimes the woman is weak and they try to refuse and they can't. I call Mr. Ben myself in the kitchen and I tell him what I had to tell him. Well, everything quiet down. He come to me after he promised nothing wouldn't happen again. He said it wasn't the nurse's fault. It was he who had held her and kissed her. And that stopped for a long time. I'm sure it stopped. Mr. Haynes, I used to keep an eye on them, and I had a servant used to watch them for me. Wilma. Wilma? No, not Wilma. Another one. It really had stopped. We all lived good. Until about October so. Somebody tell me they were meeting outside. And the man leave me and get married so quick. Mr. Haynes, that I can't realize it. I sit down sometimes and I wonder if it is true. The temptation was too great to have them living in the house together. So everybody say, agreed Mrs. Rose sadly. But the man, Mr. Haynes, the man should have remembered all that I do for him. Sorry, let me read this back over. So everybody say, agreed Mrs. Rose sadly. But the man, Mr. Haynes, the man should have remembered all that I do for him, all I have been to him. All my youth and strength I devote to Mr. Ben, and look how he recompensed me. He recompensed me, Mr. Haynes. I have been an unhappy woman in my life. Twice I make a venture with a man and twice I fail. Oh my God. I married as a young woman of 19 to Mr. Rose. I grew up as a young lady in my mother's house, Mr. Haynes. I used to sing in the choir. I didn't used to work. I used to make cakes and I was a good hand at it. But that was for my home, Mr. Haynes, and for my friends. It was not to sell. After I was married 18 months, my husband started to be unfaithful to me. He used to be living with a woman before he married me, and the woman went away when he got married. But she came right back to Trafalgar, where I come from, and she wasn't there a month before he go back to her. And then was constant quarreling. He come home night after night, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. Mr. Haynes, women have to suffer too much from men, and my temper was always hot. Sometimes he didn't used to come at all. Then the woman started to throw remarks at me when I was walking in the street, and my mother tell me to leave him. I leave him and went home. I didn't ask him for no support, Mr. Haynes, and he and the woman leave and go to America. I stay home for 2 or 3 years, and then I started to make cakes and bread and send out. Once you married, you know, Mr. Haynes, you can't go back as a young lady doing nothing. And I wanted something to do. Well, I wasn't getting on very well when Mr. Ben proposed to me. Well, I was getting on very well when Mr. Ben proposed to me. At first, I didn't want to take him, but afterwards I tell him yes. I had some money and he had some too, not much, and we opened together. Mr. Haynes, the man right for me. Yes, he right for me, and right my mother too. He promised to do all in his power to make me happy and to be true and kind and faithful all the days of his life. A little before he went, I show him the letter and tell him, a little before he went, I show him the letter and tell him, You didn't only tell me, you write it, and words pass away, but black and white remain forever. First I hear this one. He say, "Oh, that's old talk. You see at men, Mr. Haynes. Mr. Haynes, my poor deceased mother dead and gone, but she was against it. She tell me, Alice, he is a man who you will have to help. He isn't a man who will help you." She was against it, but life was spoilt already. I couldn't stop a widow. I couldn't stop a widow all the days of my life, and I went with him. My mother wouldn't have anything to do with me after that. She died and I didn't see her. When I wanted to go, the man kept me back, and when I went up, it was too late. Poor woman. Poor woman. I'm glad she didn't live to see me as I am today. She wanted me when she was dying and was calling for me. She died and I didn't see her. All on the account of this wretched man. She leaves a little property, the house she used to live in, and 2 others for me. Little houses, but still something. Well, Mr. Ben and me was getting on good. I made 1 baby for him and I lose it. Working, yes, lose it. Yes, Mr. Haynes. When I should have been lying down, I was working. I nearly died, and the doctor said I wouldn't have any more. It was bitter for me, but now I see that God in His wisdom knew better. Where I would have been today with a long string of children to support. Perhaps that might have kept him. Perhaps. But nothing was going to keep Mr. Haynes. Perhaps that might have kept him. Perhaps. But nothing was going to keep him, Mr. Haynes. Not that man. Anyway, as I was telling you, we work hard together. He helped me well, and we made money, and we live a happy life. We had our little troubles, but the king and queen have them too. And he was always a man who liked a frock. But all men are like that. And when you married a man, so I guess this is the other term, when you say women who are womanizers, you just say, oh, I love frock. We had our little troubles, but the king and queen have them. And he was a man who liked a frock. But all men are like that. And when you marry a man and get to know him, well, there's plenty of things you must see and don't see. He make me sell the property. He make me sell the property as if he didn't like me to have anything by myself. He worry me till I sell it. Then we start to build this house. Trouble, Mr. Haynes. Trouble? We start just as the war break out. Prices went up. I can't tell you the trouble we had. At last, I can't tell you the trouble we had. But at last we finish it. And all the time Mr. Ben living high. He used to dress. When he step out, people take him for a barrister or a doctor. He eat the best and drink the best. And whenever he was going out, $5, $10, $15 in his pocket. I see that man go to races once a year and spend $140 in 3 days. We used to rent out the house, but after a time things went so bad. You remember the bad times we had to come and live here. You remember the bad times we had to come and live here. Then the restaurant parlor we had went down. We give it up and we start the skate business. Mr. Haynes, all this time the man wouldn't finish paying off the mortgage. If things get bad, live a little, quiet, give up luxuries till they get better, and then you will live as you used to. No, he couldn't do that. He wouldn't do that. When he want money, he make a row If I didn't borrow it, he borrow here, he borrowed there, and now when things really turn bad, he leave me. But God will punish him, Mr. Haynes. God will punish him. She held her head back and it quivered on her neck. Justifiably. shone in her eyes and transfigured her face. Over the lips, toward the Roman nose, she spoke with power. God will punish him, Mr. Haynes. He can't escape. I'm going to see him suffer. I'm going to see Mr. Ben suffer. You can see the wrong he have done me. I can see it. Everybody can see it. You don't think God can see it? You don't think God can see it too? He watching. He's seeing. He's saying nothing, but he not sleeping. God don't like ugly, Mr. Haynes, and tears of blood going to run from Mr. Ben's eyes for the misery he has caused me. His heart hurting him where he is. If things was going nice and easy, it would hurt him. If things was going nice and easy, it would hurt him. Much less now that he's seen trouble. His mind going to come back to me. As I tell him one day when he was quarreling about the woman, he say he was going. I tell him, go, but you will never forget me. Wherever you go, wherever you may be, by land or by sea, my spirit before you will ever see. Oh, that is what you tell Ben. Mr. Haynes, I have been more than a wife to him. I have been a mother, a nurse. I have been a mother. I nurse him in sickness. I shield him from harm, and he gone and leave me. But let him go with that woman. Day will come when he will call for the one he leave behind. Mr. Haynes, if my little child that died was alive today, so that I could hold her to my bosom and cherish her, or if Maisie was a different child, a girl who could comfort me, it wouldn't be so hard. What hurts me is that I have nobody. But Mr. Haynes, her voice, which had softened, rose again. Maisie not going to stay in my house after I put my bills in order. I can't keep her here. She brings back all my wrongs when I see her. You see, I leave her alone. I don't ask her to do anything. I leave her to do what she wants. All the work I have, I fight with it. Me and Phyllis. She knew everything, Mr. Haynes, and she used to be standing by the gate on a Sunday morning looking to see when I coming up, while the two of them carrying on inside. The girl betrayed my honor for vanilla ice cream and sugar cake. The girl betrayed my honor for vanilla ice cream and sugar cake. And the man didn't have no shame. Look who he had assisting him in his nastiness. A child who used to call him Papi, who he held in his arms as a baby. I well rid of him. Yes, Mr. Haynes, I well rid of him. Men change. They're all in prosperity, but when adversity come, then you see the bones of them. I like this part. It sounds interesting. Men change. They all right in prosperity, but when adversity come, then you see the bones of them. You are a gentleman, Mr. Haynes, and I can tell you this. If you know what Mr. Ben asked me to do a few months before you come to live here, races was coming on and he wanted a suit and money to go. He tell me to go to town and see Mr. Nesfield, who carry on that grocery in Main Street. We used to deal there long ago. He tell me to go and tell Mr. Nesfield we in difficulty and if he could lend us $50. I tell him, McCarthy, try and do without the money. Let us keep down a little and then we will have times as before. Mr. Haynes, the man makes such a row that for peace I had to go. And when I dressed the morning to go, he called me and tell me, hey, if Mr. Nesfield scrupling to send you the money, and he offer to you, and he offered to you that wouldn't be nothing if you take him. My word, what a man. As long as you don't do it in secret behind my back, it's all right. That's what he tell me, Mr. Haynes. That is what he tell me. After we lived 16 years and I was a true and faithful. I was true and faithful. You don't see the man didn't have any respect for me. I was his only convenience. She dropped a tear or two on the table. A gust of wind blew some of the receipts out of the box all over the room and some into the yard. No, no, Mr. Haynes, leave them. Maisie! Yes, Tanty, said Maisie immediately from Miss Atwell's doorstep. Go outside and pick up those receipts and then come in here and pick up these. She was standing and did not sit down again. Mr. Haynes, I leave them to the will of God. He will deal with them in his good time. I have them in the hollow of my hand, but leave them to him. Yes, Mr. Haynes, yes. The nurse is a famous thief. The nurse is a famous thief. Wherever she go to, the nurse steals something. Links, gold stud, gold watch, gold stopper, cigars, brandy, all sort of stuff. Don't laugh, Mr. Haynes, don't laugh. It's true. Everything that woman put her hand on, she steal, and she bring them here. She used to say it was presents they give her, but once when she thought they was going to lock her up, she telephoned to him and tell him where the key was and to open her press and take all the jewels he see and hide them. She was expecting the police to come, but they didn't come. And after that, the man used to wear the links and the stud. I used to tell him, McCarthy, don't do it. He wouldn't hear, and they have the things down there, Mr. Haynes. I only have to go down to the constabulary and lay my information, and the two of them will sleep in the cell tonight. Because reports been made to the police already about the missing things. But I wouldn't do that, Mr. Haynes. Perhaps my principle is too high. But she told me in confidence when she was my friend, and I wouldn't use it now. She's my enemy. The clock struck 3. She was a little hoarse, but she must hoarse with all of this storytelling and talking. I guess maybe sometimes when persons are stressed, they talk. And talking sometimes is good too, it helps to relieve your stress and I guess make you feel better. So at least she had Mr. Haynes to talk to. The clock struck 3. She was a little hoarse. She had been talking for nearly 2 hours. But Mr. Haynes was far from tired and could have listened to the subdued passion of her voice and watched the working of her face until dark. Mr. Haynes, I have been here since 1 o'clock. I keep you back from your work. You must excuse me. Sometimes I feel if I don't speak to somebody, I will die. I have everything here. She laid her hand on her bosom. At any rate, Mrs. Rose, said Haynes, striving to rise to the occasion. You must keep your spirits up. You mustn't think of your troubles too much. She smiled gratefully. All right, Mr. Haynes, as you see, I am fighting and I have the great help of the helper of the afflicted. God is there for all those who need him. I would have sunk to the ground already, but prayer sustained me. They wouldn't get my house, Mr. Haynes. They wouldn't get my house, Mr. Haynes, and I'm not going to go mad. Let them wait. 4 times a day I kneel to my Maker. 6 in the morning, midday, 6 in the evening, and at midnight, whatever I'm doing, I leave it when that hour comes. I go to my bedroom, I compose myself, and then I speak to my God. At 12 in the night too, Haynes, said Haynes, remembering the woman's labors in the day. Wondered at the heroic vigils she must endure to fulfill this voluntary program. At midnight, yes, she said proudly, conscious of the powers it displayed to keep so exacting thirst. And I don't go to sleep, Mr. Haynes. I am sleepy and tired, but I sit in my rocking chair, dozing and wait until the clock strikes 12 every night before I think of going to bed. And one night, Mr. Haynes, said Maisie, appearing on the doorstep with some of the receipts in her hand. One night, Mrs. Rose fall. Every night she only nodding and nodding in the chair, and this night she was nodding, and when the clock strikes, she start up, and the rocking chair tumble over and she come down flat. What a terrible girl, telling Haynes, Mr. Haynes this. Maisie was enjoying her own joke, but Haynes dared not smile, and he kept his eye on Mrs. Rose, whose face darkened as the tropical sky before the rain. "Excuse me, Mr. Haynes," she said to Maisie. "Excuse me, Mr. Haynes." She turned to Maisie and shook her finger under her nose. "Move aside and let me pass. Go on, you young woman. Whether anybody there or not, you have no respect for me. But if next year meet you in this house, you're lucky. You will find out if those you join with to kill me want you now." But I don't know how why Maisie can bother Miss Rose. So. God have mercy. Maisie always make that trouble Miss Rose, make Miss Rose get in a temper. Anyway, folks, that is the end of chapter 18. So this is the end of, and chapter 18 was quite long. Yeah, quite long. So this is the end of chapter 18, and we'll pause there for now. It's actually getting dark. So we'll pause there. We'll stop there for now, and then when we come back on, we'll go on to chapter 19. Alright, so thank you folks for joining me today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending the time to tune in. I really appreciate it. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share, and please leave a comment. Please leave a comment about my reading and what you think. Alright, and if there's any other books that you would like me to read, share, let me know. Alright, so thank you. You guys have a productive week ahead. I always say that when the week comes ahead, I plan, and I always try to get, little things done. They say time waits for no man. So time is something that we can't wait. So always try to ensure that your week and your days are productive. Alright, so thank you. Thanks for joining me. Have a good week. Bye.